Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Sirianni.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Sirianni, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. In this episode, I'm going to share with you reasons for understanding what your leadership style is today and ways you can clarify what your leadership style is if you're not already familiar with it, and how to adapt your style to meet the needs of the situation at hand. Now, before we get started, if you're listening for the first time, I just want to take a minute to introduce myself. I've spent my entire career in technology, about 35 years. Started off as a programmer right out of college, worked my way up to senior leadership roles in tech organizations. I managed teams across the US, Europe, and Asia. My last corporate role was as Chief People Officer for a software company, and as much as I love championing a fantastic company culture and winning a Best Place to Work award, I was drawn to leave my corporate role behind to become a full-time consultant and coach. Now, as both a coach and a consultant, I help leaders in technology accelerate growth, both for themselves personally and for their organizations, while creating a workplace for their teams to thrive. So I do a lot of work with senior leadership teams on company culture, employee engagement, and leadership development programs, just to name a few of the types of projects that I most often work on. So let's get started. First, I want to talk about why it's helpful to understand what your leadership style is. Now, a very basic point here is that you will be asked to describe your leadership style on most interviews that you go on. Recently, I was speaking with somebody who had been a C-suite executive for many, many years. He was interviewing to work with a new CEO at a different company, and this was one of the key questions. So, describe your leadership style. Now, fortunately, he was quite familiar with his style, so he was able to articulate it. He did get the job, and now working with a new C-suite of executives, new CEO, new company. But this is a question that comes up on most interviews, one way or another. Now, it was actually the CEO who asked this question, so it's going to come up if it hasn't already. Another reason why it's helpful to understand your style is that once you have clarity on what it is, you can make deliberate choices on when and where to use it or adapt it. If you have that self-awareness, you're going to know, am I going into a situation where my natural style is going to be helpful, or is something else needed in this moment or for this upcoming situation I need to deal with? When you're clear on it, you can also employ strategies for situations when it's not your strong suit. That way, you'll know how to partner with others to get the best results for you and for the organization. So again, being self-aware on your leadership style is going to help you not only adapt, but know when to partner with other people who may have strengths that you need in those situations. Now, lastly, you'll feel greater satisfaction and actually increased confidence when you have the knowledge that how you're approaching a situation is exactly what's needed in that moment. Maybe it's you have a natural style or talent that's precisely what's needed. And so it just boosts your confidence a bit because you know going into it, oh, I've got this covered. I know that what it needs is exactly what I'm good at. It bolsters your confidence. You can approach it with a lot of positivity. And you may think that sounds like, well, of course. But you know what? When I'm coaching my clients, I will often hear senior leaders confide in me that some new situations are challenging their confidence. That, yes, on the outside, they're projecting confidence to their organization, but on the inside, they have self-doubts. Am I really going to be able to approach this, handle it? I've never done this before. What if I fail? So everyone, we're all human. Everyone has those moments of self-doubt. But again, when you're clear on what your leadership style is and figure out how to adapt your style to meet the needs of a situation, it absolutely will just be another skill that you will have that's going to benefit you throughout your leadership career. You may have some other reasons why this is appealing to you. Do you know what your leadership style is? Have you ever been asked that question on an interview? How did you answer? Were you clear and articulate and confident in your answer? Or did maybe you stumble and think, oh, I'm not really sure how to describe my style. Those words just aren't rolling off my tongue. And when you give it some thought, you maybe can come up with a good answer, but sometimes in the moment, people can stumble a little bit. So hopefully what I'm going to share with you, I'm going to give you a couple of resources where you can do some work on your own to clarify your style, and it will serve you well. Now, the first thing I want to equip you with is to go over 3 basic styles of leadership. I want you to have these in your back pocket because all 3 can be part of your toolkit, okay? So the first style I want to cover, there's 3 basic styles. You may have heard of them, but they're styles that you will want to use with the right situation. So the first one is command and control. Now, you probably have heard that for years. Now, command and control is a style that really works best when you've got this hierarchy in the organization, there's clear authority, and it works well when maybe speed is important. You need to get something done quickly, and there isn't any time to, let's sit and debate this, because you're in charge, you're the boss, you're the leader, and you know what needs to get done, and so you're going to dictate the actions that need to be taken. Now, let me give you actually a couple stories. Now, I would say for me, early in my career, when I started off as a programmer, there was no consensus and collaboration at the outset. Most of the styles were command and control. It kind of sounds a little bit negative, but it actually wasn't. My bosses at the time were giving me assignments, telling me how they wanted something done. That was appropriate. They had the authority and the experience and the knowledge, and I didn't. I was junior. So, of course, that was an appropriate style. But I want to fast forward to later in my career, just give you 1 or 2 quick stories of where command and control was absolutely what was needed in the situation. Now, at one point in my career, I had responsibility for business continuity and disaster recovery. And this spanned maybe 2 different companies, couple of different roles where that was just part of our technology organization. Is we had, especially in financial services, of course, we have to be resilient as an organization because of the impact financially if we have any disruption. So in those moments, if there was a disruption, it was command and control was the style that was most needed in that situation. So let me give you an example. There was one day, and I was working for a global custodian bank that had trillions of dollars under management, global organization, very well managed institution. And one day, this was several years ago, one day we actually lost our corporate network. It was on a business day. And I happened to be in charge that day on the business side for directing all of our business units on what do we need to do, how do we assess potential risk, how do we assess actions to be taken, and so on. So I was in charge that day. So we already had a very well-defined hierarchy and structure of how we would handle this type of situation. So as the leader of a particular slice of work that day, it was command and control. Take charge, issue instructions, directions, gather information, make fast decisions, and so on from top down. In that type of situation, speed is important. Authority needs to come from the top to have everything well organized in terms of communication, actions to be taken, and so on, execute on certain types of plans. In that moment, you're not gathering around a table or a conference call to say, well, let's talk about our alternatives. Let's be collaborative here. What do we really want to do? There's no time for that. You need to act fast. So command and control can be a relevant style in many types of situations. That's just one example. Most of my command and control examples seem to be in that sort of business emergency disruption category. Years after that, I was in the Philippines in our Manila office when we got hit with the worst typhoon ever in the history of the Philippines. Well, that was the moment when, again, my leadership style quickly changed back to command and control. Here's what we have to do in terms of evacuation, making sure people are safe. We had a call center, so we needed to make sure we flipped the call center to another region. There's many steps in place. So that's a natural fit. You could see where the needs of the situation in that type of emergency, command and control is going to be the appropriate style to use. Okay. Now, honestly, my whole career has been in technology. I am sure there are other, think about your organization, your role within the organization, what you do, how you do it, the clients that you serve. When would command and control be an appropriate and desirable style for a particular potential situation? Could be a situation with a client. Maybe there's a client issue, an outage, a disruption, a problem, and maybe command and control is appropriate in that situation. So think about, even look recently, what has been a recent situation where you could imagine that command and control is the appropriate style and the best style for that situation. Now, where it wouldn't work is when you want creativity and innovation and that type of dynamic to emerge, because you're really stifling that. You're issuing orders and instructions, and you've got clear authority. You're working within a structure and a hierarchy. That is not going to foster creativity, because you're basically, right, you're barking orders. Now, so anyway, think about your organization, situations that you may confront as a leader. When would command and control be appropriate? Okay. And if you're working with your boss, your colleagues, your peers, your employees, you can even express in that situation or in that moment, we've got to act fast here. We need speed. Time is not our friend here. We need to act quickly. We don't really have time to debate. I need right now, I've got to make some fast decisions. Here's what you need to do. And you're giving out assignments or whatever it is. So you could even articulate that, hey, we've got a unique situation. We're going into this mode of operation right now. And then everybody understands that's what's needed right now, right? So you can articulate that. That was the first one. The second basic style that you have probably used, experienced, and so on is called consensus. Now, consensus, when I think consensus, that's when you're working with a group of colleagues, peers, everyone has equal authority, and you really want every member of this small group, because you wouldn't do it with a large group. Maybe, let's just say 5 to 7 people, just for sake of argument, it's less than 7 people. But you're working in a fairly small group, and you know that what's at stake requires that each person is on board, committed, and agrees with the course of action. You may choose to use consensus. Now, what that means is, as you're working in a small group, you want to hear each other out on points of view, ideas, plans of action, and come to agreement. Consensus means you come to agreement. So you need time to maybe influence each other, negotiate again, and come up with that final agreement. You may take a vote, but it's not majority rules. If you're trying to reach consensus, you may say, okay, so out of the 6 of us, 2 people don't agree. Let's hear you out. What are your thoughts? What's your view on this? So it's going to take time. So it works well when you want everybody in that small group to buy in. Buy-in is crucial for the success of the situation, whatever it is you're working on together. It doesn't work well if there's too many people, it's too big. Let's say you had 20 or 30 people working on an initiative, and some are leaders, some are doers. You're setting yourself up for a very cumbersome process if you want consensus across such a large group that's mixed between levels of authority and expertise. And it also works poorly if you need to act fast. Consensus takes time, right? The negotiation, back and forth. What do you mean by that? What would you find acceptable? What are your other ideas? That takes time to have those discussions. Now, I'll give you a quick example of where I have used it. When I mentioned in my introduction that I took on a position of Chief People Officer. Now, I was not an HR person in my career, but in this position, I had a much broader responsibility for helping architect company culture. It was a software company that was pieced together by an equity firm acquiring 6 smaller companies and forming one larger software company. So one of my first projects was to create a set of HR policies for this new company. And I wanted consensus among, I think there were 5 of us, it was the CFO, his controller. I hired a director of HR. I had one other person that we hired. So we were a small team. There might have been 5 of us. And as we went and chipped away at a set of policies that we would use across this larger company, I wanted consensus. As I'm sure you can imagine, you want the head of HR and the head of finance, the chief people officer and the CFO. You want them to be on the same page with benefits and your time off policy and recruiting, onboarding. There's lots of things that have both the human element and the financial aspect. So it made sense that we be on the same page and we have consensus across us. And if anybody, any of the 5 of us, as we're approaching a new set of policies, said, well, I don't know, this time off policy, what's the state of the art these days? How many days are people giving? And how do you account for it? What's the financial impact? How many sick days versus vacation time or unlimited, which is the trend. What are the pros and cons? We would dig into that and we would come up with something we all could agree with. And we were really happy, really satisfied with everything that we settled on. And we felt confident that when we rolled it out to the organization, we were united as a team, right? So consensus is important when you do want everybody on the same page. So that's a quick example of that. Now, collaborative is the 3rd basic style. So it was command and control, consensus, and now collaborative. Now, collaborative is fantastic when, let's say you've got a dispersed organization and you've got employees at all levels and in different locations where even with different levels of authority and responsibility, many people in the organization can lead collaborations. It could be initiatives, projects, programs, and you may have a set of performance targets on what will indicate success. Now, this works well, again, when it's diverse groups, maybe it's across the company, but you're all working on, say, a common initiative, a common program. So I'll give you a quick example. One company where we did this was a set of process improvement initiatives. We had a major campaign, if you will, over a 12-month period where anybody in the company could have had an idea for a process improvement that they would champion and lead and report back their results. And we had a whole structure in place of how you would propose what it was, get endorsement, and then lead it, and then report back how you did. And so people at all levels were leading specific process improvement initiatives. And it was powerful because everyone was empowered to put forth their ideas and say, I will champion this. Whether you're accounts payable or you're a software developer, everybody could look at their sphere of influence, the work they were doing, and say, for our team, we could cut costs by 10% if we did X. Well, that's pretty significant, but we could improve efficiency and cut this from 4 days down to 3 days if we did X. So that's an example of collaborative, right? Employees at all levels and locations, people who lead these collaborations have some clear authority, and it works well when you want innovation and creativity, right? It's the opposite of top down, right? Opposite of command and control. Because when people are empowered to put forth their ideas, drive an initiative, you're giving them more space and time to come up with those creative ideas, to be innovative, right? Nobody's dictating to them precisely steps A, B, and C that they have to take. Having a collaborative style can be fantastic when your situation at hand is you want to foster, again, creativity and innovation. Now, as I said earlier, you want to adapt your style to meet the needs of the situation. Now, these are 3 basic styles that anybody, regardless of your unique strengths, you could employ any one of these styles based on the situation. Okay? Command and control, consensus, and collaborative. Okay? So you can add those 3 terms. If you weren't already familiar with them, you certainly now have a thumbnail sketch of each one. And ask yourself, based on what's going on right now in your organization, what you're working on, what's coming up, what's a situation that's emerging that you need to handle, and which of these 3 styles would be most appropriate? How would you need to adapt your own unique natural leadership style to meet the needs of that situation? Would one of these three styles work? Which of the three would work best? Okay, so think about that. Those are three basic approaches that you could use starting today. Okay, but I want to share a whole nother path you could take that would give you even more clarity and be more personalized to you and your strengths. Now, have you ever taken the assessment called StrengthsFinder? It's StrengthsFinder 2.0. If you haven't taken it, it's a fantastic assessment. I've covered it in other podcasts. I won't go over it here, but there is a leadership version. It's the same set of 34 strengths, but it's looking through the lens of leadership. Okay. This is an assessment where you can actually buy the book. The book is called Strengths-Based Leadership. It's from Gallup. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's a quick read. It's easy. But the power of the book is it helps you discover your own unique style of leadership. Now, what I love about it, well, it's a great book, but in the back of the book is a little envelope. It's a little gray envelope, and it has instructions with a unique access code where you can take the StrengthsFinder 2.0 assessment. Now, if you've taken StrengthsFinder before, you probably realize that you really never need to take it more than once because your strengths it's supposed to be a natural part of who you are, your natural talents. You don't really ever need to take it again. But in this instance, I do encourage you to take it again because with this access code and this particular assessment, what you're getting back is a different report. It's a different report, and it's called Strengths-Based Leadership Guide. Now, what Gallup has done, and one of the reasons I love it is that you don't need a coach to walk you through the assessment. You can take the assessment on your own. It probably takes you 15 minutes to do it. Get the PDF, download it, read it. It has lots of instructions, as really rich, valuable report. And it's actually called a guide because it does give you advice based on your leadership strengths, what you can do. But again, you can do this all on your own. You can order the book off Amazon. You could get it at Barnes & Noble. But the minute you have it, you can take the assessment, get the report, and then use that report as a very rich leadership guide. You don't need to hire a coach, do the assessment. Because many assessments you actually can't do on your own. You need to have a coach. It's a special leadership assessment, and you don't have access to the tool. But this is different. This is available to you right off the shelf, and it's really good. Now, here's what I like about it the most. What Gallup has done, if they have studied and worked with thousands of leadership teams, and they've culled that data to establish 4 distinct domains of leadership strength: executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And based on your unique strengths, when you get your report, it will give you your top 5 out of a possible 34 strengths. And these are themes. What this allows you to do is to pinpoint where you fit on these 4 domains. You may have the majority of your strengths in one of them. Like for me, 3 of my 5 strengths are under strategic thinking, just as an example. For you, the report allows you and shows you where your strengths align with these categories. Now, the beauty of that is that it allows you to achieve one of the things I said early on in this episode, is that once you have clarity on your style, you can make deliberate choices on when and where to use it or adapt it. It allows you to even explain your style to someone else. So I'll give you an example. Again, I mentioned the categories are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. Now, I worked for a CEO who 3 out of his 5 strengths were under executing. Now, individuals or leaders who have the dominant strength in the executing domain, they know how to make things happen. They know when they need to implement a solution. They know that once there's an idea, they know how to make it a reality. Now, this CEO that I work for, 3 of his strengths, if I can remember correctly, were focus, discipline, and consistency. So, knowing that about him, and this was something he shared with us, what his strengths were, you could then see it play out in his day-to-day behaviors. So if we came up with an idea, let's say how we were going to onboard new employees, and he agreed that he was going to give an orientation on a quarterly basis to these new employees, you knew you could count on him to do this consistently. He was committed to it. We had a discipline around how we did it and precise details around the timing, what was a PowerPoint presentation, what he spoke with told stories, how he engaged the group of people. It was all very precise. And that's just an example. But everything he did when we set goals, another example is when we set goals for the company for the quarter, you could rest assured that he would stay focused on them, unwavering focus, consistent commitment on those goals. There were things about his natural style based on his strengths that you could count on. This is how he showed up day after day to make things happen in the company so that we hit our goals, we hit our targets, we delivered what we said we were going to deliver. So his greatest strengths were in executing. Now, I recently was coaching someone who also felt that their strengths were under executing, but also relationship building, and not so much at all under strategic thinking. Now, the beauty of this is once you're clear on what comes naturally to you, that now gives you awareness of where you may have areas that, because they're not your strength, now you can develop strategies to employ in situations where it's what's needed, but it's not what you have. For example, partnering with others. So let's say the strategic thinking domain is when you as a leader, and let's take an example and say, let's say that you are futuristic, you're strategic, you love discussing, exploring new ideas. You love thinking about the future and thinking about what's possible and how to help your team make better decisions, how to absorb and analyze information and guide the team forward to this future vision. Maybe you view yourself as a visionary leader. If you do, and that's what's needed, fantastic. Let's say you've just created a new organization, you've got some new functions, people have been hired or rearranged within the organization to maybe start working towards this new vision. Maybe you are completely comfortable describing this vision in a very inspiring way to your organization. It's where you shine. You're able to explain the vision. Maybe you're the one who's inspiring the vision in the first place. And now with your strategic thinking skills, you're able to guide the organization toward this vision. And that may come naturally to you. But let's say the situation that you're facing needs attention to detail, focus, executing, consistency, getting it done, starting it, achieving it, crossing the finish line, getting it done, down in the execution details. And if that does not come naturally to you, it is better for you to realize that and look within your organization, your team, to see what could you do to complement your strategic skills so that the job does get done. For myself, because most of my top 5 strengths, 3 of the 5 are under strategic thinking, I found myself in that situation. But I knew that the directors or managers who worked for me, I knew that they had the ability to go far deeper on it when execution was required than I did. I could maybe take it up to a certain point, but there was a certain point where I could do it, but I maybe wasn't the best person to do it. And so now I either collaborate or partner or delegate so that the individual who picks that up, they've got that strength. They have the ability because maybe the majority of their strengths are under that category of executing. So you don't need to be all things to all people, but once you understand and have awareness of your leadership style, you will know which kinds of situations that you can step into and it's exactly what's needed in that moment, or you recognize there's a disconnect between where you shine and what the situation needs. So let's say I gave you a couple examples earlier of some crisis situations. If you are really great at strategic thinking and visionary and futuristic, but if faced with a business crisis like that, you might say, you know what? That type of situation, that's not my sweet spot. That's not where I shine. I really need somebody who's good in those moments to be my right-hand man, work together, partner, or even just delegate it to them. Okay? So you don't want to set yourself up for failure by using a style that's simply not going to work in that situation. So if you can't adapt to it, and you know is just not going to be the best results for the organization, you will show great emotional intelligence if you can use that awareness to make the best decision for you, for your team, and for the organization. But let me keep going through a couple of the other examples, and then we'll wrap up here. But I want to share a couple more examples. So I said executing is knowing how to make things happen, working tirelessly to get it done. Once you catch an idea, you know how to make it a reality. Okay. And I've already given you some examples on that. Being an achiever, consistent, being very deliberative, discipline, focus, responsibility, problem solving. Okay, those would all fall under the domain of executing. The next category of influencing. Now, influencing skills are interesting because this really comes into play when you need to help your team reach a much broader audience. So you would help your team by you knowing how to do that. If this is your sweet spot, you know how to always be selling your team's ideas both inside the organization and outside. You speak up and you make sure the group is heard. You're very good at this. Your strengths could be communication or, competition, right? You need to be competitive to speak up and advocate maybe for your group. Or you know how to take something good and make it better. You have the self-confidence, the self-assurance. You know how to win others over. So you have any one of a number of skills that could fall under influencing. And so if there's situations where that's exactly what your team needs, then these skills could serve you well. Your style in leading the team could be partially about influencing others. Okay. Now, the next category is around relationship building. And I actually worked with somebody who, and it doesn't happen often, but all 5 of her top 5 strengths all fit under relationship building. Now, relationship building is really about creating the team, the group, the organization to be stronger than each individual. You know how to minimize distractions to keep the team's energy really high. You know how to mentor people to push them towards bigger and better achievements. And I just want to digress on this one for a minute because coaching is something that you may be really good at. And that's actually been called a leadership style. And I'm just using this as an example. You may focus on the long-term development of the team, and you may see yourself as a coach. You might view that as your dominant leadership style. And you support their development by giving them advice, coaching, mentoring, encouraging them. You can see the gap between what they're really strong at, but what their true potential, like you see that they can do even more. So you're pushing them to take on more and achieve even more. Like when someone's successful and they've achieved something, that's the moment when they're feeling victorious to raise the bar even a little bit higher, to push them even more because they're feeling really confident, right? And you're pushing them in a direction where you have complete confidence they can succeed. You're saying, I believe in you. I'm investing you. I know you're going to give your best effort, right? And so coaching, mentoring, and developing people could be how you see yourself, right? As that coach, okay? But relationship building, also goes beyond your own team, but that is a really powerful leadership style. And there could be situations where that is exactly what's needed. Maybe you've taken on a new group and one of your goals is to develop a high performance team. And you can see that each individual might need coaching, mentoring, some training. They need to be challenged. They actually need your attention to flourish within the group. So that could be something that you employ because the needs of the situation warrant it. Now, I know I have taken on many groups where something was dysfunctional. I usually don't take over groups that are already working beautifully. I'm usually was the person that would take on something that wasn't working. And that was my goal, is to turn it around. So if you're taking on a team that you're not sure that they're working at their peak efficiency or productivity, you think they've got a lot of talent, but there's a lot of room to grow, then you can look at your skills and see, of your top 5 strengths, which of these domains can you employ to help the team achieve the goals that you have in mind, right? In relationship building, there's like I said, a number of skills that I just covered, which could really, help you in that situation. You being a coach in that situation could be precisely the right strategy. Okay. So now the 4th and final category, again, once you take this assessment online, which is about 15 minutes, and you get the report, you'll see, of your top 5 strengths, which of these domains do they fit under? Now, strategic thinking is when you focus on what could be. You stretch the team's thinking for the future. You're basically painting that picture of what's possible. You're helping the team maybe drill into the cause and effect on some problems. You may be helping them analyze information to make better decisions. But again, you're doing it with the future in mind. You're leading them, guiding them to what could be, right? Possibilities. Now, strategic thinking, what I see sometimes with my clients is they may feel that they want to be more of a strategic thinker, even though none of their top 5 strengths fall into this category. And you can do this. The question is, based on the situation, how confident do you feel that this is going to be your natural way of attacking a situation? So let me give you an example. Having a visionary leadership style would be when you're providing that long-term direction and vision for people, mobilizing them towards a vision, and you're painting a picture in a way that's inspiring them, motivating them to want to work with it, to want to work with you. And if you don't feel that that is genuinely who you are, you're much more comfortable, confident, energized, successful, effective when you're focusing on, for example, executing, then you're going to want to adapt your style to fit the situation. And one of those steps, as I mentioned earlier, is instead of setting yourself up for failure by saying, there's some skills I don't really have here, look at who you have that you could partner with. So maybe if you feel that that's not your strong point, like executing, you've got it in spades. You absolutely can do that blindfolded. That's your sweet spot. But on the strategic side, you can look at your team, your colleagues, whoever you feel comfortable that you're working with and working with closely, who is good at this, where maybe it's a brainstorming session, a strategy session, tossing out ideas, having a conversation, doing it in a way that's collaborative, right? Tap into others. You don't have to go it alone. So the style could be collaborative, but you're pulling in people who have the strength that you don't have. You don't have to be good at, in fact, where you will get your best results is when you're focusing on what you're good at. And when you adapt your style, it may be that you're adapting it, but you still feel comfortable and confident that you've picked a situation that plays to something you're already good at. Let me give you another example. Learner, if you know what the 34 strengths are, you know that under strategic thinking, there's analytical, there's providing the bigger picture, the context for the conversation or the work to be done. There's being futuristic, exploring ideas, being strategic itself as a skill, and then learner. So let's say learner is one of your top 5. You can use that, leverage that going into a situation as one of your strategic, it might be your only strategic thinking skill, but learner is powerful. What can we research, learn? Is there something that not only you, but maybe the organization or the team needs to learn or will learn as a result of striving to satisfy the situation? So maybe, let's say, for example, there's a client situation, and in order to resolve that situation, there's something the team is going to learn how to do. So you might use your learner strength to guide the team on what the course of action needs to be. Now, I just want to mention something to you. A study was done on process improvement initiatives, And the only ones that were successful in achieving their goals were the ones that had a significant learning objective. So, learner is a strategic skill. And if you can approach it, you might approach the conversation about the project, the initiative, the problem to be solved, whatever it is, and learner is one of your sweet spots, then you can use that as a style to guide the team. What can we learn from this? Is there research we need to do? Is there a tool we need in our toolkit? Is there something we need to learn how to do in order for this to be successful? Is it something some people already know how to do and they're going to teach, mentor, coach, guide the rest of the team? I mentioned earlier I had a team in the Philippines, and it was a very large organization, and using learning as an impetus for some major improvements was very effective, because people tend to be, maybe not everybody, people tend to be very excited about learning something new, whether it's knowledge or capabilities, skills, tools. And it was the key impetus to really bring the organization up to the next level, was the amount of time that we interjected into some of our projects on learning, whether it was shadowing, learning a new tool, having sessions to teach people things. It ended up being a key strategy. So that style can work. So again, if you take the assessment, you will get this report, Strengths-Based Leadership Guide. It will show you what your top 5 strengths are, and it will explain these 4 domains, and it will give you advice on, for example, my number 1 strength is achiever. And for each of your top 5 strengths, it will give you advice on how to leverage each of those strengths to build trust, show compassion, provide stability, and create hope. Because these were 4 things that Gallup determined most people need and want to feel engaged in the organization. So it gives you very specific guidance on how to do that, leveraging that strength. And it gives you those 4 things for each one of your 5 strengths. And it tells you if you're leading somebody, let's say you've got a director or a manager working for you or an employee, it tells you, how do you lead somebody with that strength? Now, this would require that you know the strengths in this structure of everybody that works for you, or at least your direct reports. But anyway, it's a very powerful guide. Now, here's what I love about it. It's very personal. I gave you 3 basic styles: command and control, consensus, and collaborative. And right away, you can assess the situation you're facing today and adapt your style using any one of those 3. But going a step further to what your unique style is, you've got 5 top strengths that also are influencing you every step of the way on where you choose to focus your attention. So I mentioned earlier, the CEO that I work for, I would have said that part of his style was around his focus on execution, his focus, his consistency, his commitment. That was a key part of his style, unique to him. Now, if I was describing you, I might use different language because you're unique. You bring a different set of strengths to the table. So I strongly encourage you to buy the book. It's probably, less than $20. It includes this assessment. You get the report. So it's a bargain, and it will give you insight into where you can put your focus in adapting your leadership style to meet the needs of a situation. Okay. So hopefully you have found this helpful. You not only have some information, the 3 styles that you could pick and choose what's going to work for a situation immediately, but you also now have, think of it as a little bit of a homework assignment that you could buy the book, do the assessment, and really will take your leadership style to the next level of knowing when, where, and how to apply it to a situation. And if you need to adapt, it's how do you pull in others, partner with others in areas where that's their strong suit. So you're going to feel greater satisfaction and confidence when you know that you're approaching a situation that absolutely aligns with your natural talent and style, or if it needs a different approach. So for example, when I take on consulting projects, in the work that I do today, or even back when I was in a corporate role. When something needed me to be strategic and futuristic and paint the picture of the future and then guide people toward that, and maybe there was a heavy learning component, I was in my element because this is what I was good at. But if you said, Donna, we need you to take over this operational group and focus on the consistent execution of these processes and operational details, there might have been something you'd paint a picture and say, whoa, that's not me. What I'm good at and my style, that might not be the right situation. So I'm drawing the connection that this is going to be really powerful for you to have that self-awareness as a leader. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. Before I go, I would love to ask you, if this episode was helpful to you, I'd love for you to jump into the iTunes ratings and review tab and leave a comment. I would love to hear from you, either a rating or review, to know if this was helpful. Anyway, I hope that it was helpful and you have a great day and I wish you the best.